My name is Rori Neiss, and I am Orthodox Jewish. I was born into the Orthodox Jewish community and have identified as Orthodox my entire life. It's always hard for me to really answer why I stayed or how I've really come to be so immersed in it, because it's just always been such an integral part of my life, and especially growing up in the community where our weeks are cycled around Shabbat and our years are cycled around holidays, and just so many of my day-to-day activities have been cycled around my faith. It's never really been something that I've ever thought too much about as separate from me to then ever be able to identify what it is as other than just who I am. Growing up in New York, it's not unusual for people to meet another Jewish person, and we might even be more of a majority in some of the neighborhoods. We are definitely a majority in some of the neighborhoods in New York. And so for the most part growing up, I had always heard about Judaism as an other, but I had never really experienced an othering. And I remember at one point being a child and walking down the street with a friend, and some people were sitting out on a porch and they were trying to guess our names. They were just calling out all the Jewish names that they knew. And it was this really shocking moment for me, because that was the first time I had ever really been othered, where somebody had looked at me, identified me as something, and then tried to know me for it, but not really actually know me. But it was this funny experience looking back at it, because at the time it was this confusing, what was that, anti-Semitism? Because we'd always heard about anti-Semitism, but I never really experienced it. And it wasn't really anything that was accompanied by fear or by any notion of danger or violence. But it was the first time that I ever really felt like, oh, I am an other, and I'm identified by that other. When I decided to go to college and attend a university that was in New York but didn't have as significant a Jewish population, and specifically an Orthodox Jewish population, that was really the first time that I started to encounter people that were more different than I was, and who really asked questions about that. And that was in a really open and welcoming fashion. And then that experience actually got me curious to learn more about other faiths and get more involved in interfaith. And in interfaith, it was really interesting because I was othered mostly because there weren't a lot of Orthodox Jews doing interfaith work. And so I was often, depending on the context, the only Orthodox Jew in a certain setting. Sometimes I was the only Jew in a certain setting. But those also were always in a context of people who were really interested in learning more about me or in finding out more about who I was. And so there wasn't really that same kind of sense of othering that I might have experienced in another setting. I think the interfaith movement just has such a tremendous power behind it, and it almost feels so momentous that I'm not even sure I could completely capture it. But on the one hand, I think that religions have been identified negatively, especially lately and especially in the media, and unjustly so. There's times where religion plays a role in ways that we're not proud of, but it's so sensationalized. But that can also really be an asset that we have, because it also means that we as faith leaders can stand together and get so much more attention for the work that we're trying to do. And that sometimes little actions, if you partner with an imam and a priest and a minister and a monk and whoever else it might be, the picture of it already garners so much more attention. And so I think it's something we need to really capitalize on. We should take advantage. If we're going to get penalized for the negative parts, we should capitalize on the positive parts. I also think that our religions have so much wisdom behind them, and so much beauty and poetry, and that we're able to talk about things in ways that are not really new. And so suddenly we're faced with issues like climate change or violence or the other, and we're grappling with how to talk about it. How do you educate people about taking care of the environment? But our faith traditions talk about those things. We have that language, and we have that language so much more eloquently than any of us could be writing now. And the reason why that language survived for hundreds or thousands of years is because there's so much truth and beauty behind it. And so we shouldn't push away from that, but we should use the language and the wisdom that we have. We should come together to share in that. And we should really take advantage of the resources that are already there to then talk about the issues that people in our faith traditions knew we needed to talk about before they became popular topics. If I had an opportunity to address the senior-most religious leaders of the major faith traditions, especially in the context of them coming together in an interfaith setting, I would first of all want to make sure that they fully appreciated the weight of the power that they held on their shoulders and to realize that they, in that moment, have the power to do just about anything. And that's huge and that's daunting, but it can't be wasted. But I also want them to know that interfaith can't just be about what we get from the other. It can't be about politics of what we want and how we can use other people to get our way. It can't be friendship only based on the support that they can give us. And it can't and it shouldn't be only there as a net for when something explodes, that there's somebody else there to respond to. Interfaith is something that's incredible and beautiful in and of itself. And it has the power to also be a safety net and to do all of these other things for us. But that can't be what's at the core. Because if at the core our relationship is only based on what you can give me, we're never going to actually get anywhere. And we have to realize that we each have a beauty of our own faith traditions. We can share something with each other. We can get something from each other. And that can be an end in and of itself. And when that becomes an end in and of itself, and when we have that relationship just in itself, then yes, we can also stand with each other. We can also defend each other. We can also support each other. We can do so much more than that. And if it's not there, then that relationship will never stand.